Hello, this is Yummy Pajama Man, and today we're going to learn about nested loops, and that's pretty much it, nested loops. As you can see up here, I've used a bunch of for clauses, so the whole thing, for like this one right here, it's called a clause. So I'm using 3 clauses, one underneath the other, and let's output this real quick so you can see that it actually does work in a nested loop. Obviously down here I didn't put this in a comment because I'll never get there, so I'll just show you what the output is. So it'll give us the time for this, and obviously it's going to be a lot slower because I'm recording, but if you're in a situation where you're looping continuously and you want to get out of that loop, just press Control C, and then it'll give you a keyboard interrupt error. So it's just saying that you got out by pressing Control C. And so that's the loop right here. It'll keep on looping until it goes to hour 23 minute 59 second 59. So at the very end it'll be 23:59:59, and that's it. So I was obviously in military time as well. So that's the output. And here we've used the for clause before, but only for, I think we've only used it by itself, so only one for clause. So right here we're using 3 for clauses. So what we're looking at is called a nested loop. And what's happening in this program is that starting from the beginning, so you see for, hour, and range. You've seen the range function before. You can think of it as creating a list with values of 0 through 23, because this is the end value. It doesn't include the end value. And you're probably wondering, oh, where's the other 2 values? Since I didn't specify the other 2 values and I only gave one value, that one value that I gave inside of range will be the end value. So this is actually equivalent to, if I type this out, it's equivalent to 0,24,1. So yeah, if I get my commas right. Yeah, so that's equivalent to this. Okay, so 0,24,1 is equivalent to this right here. So so if I specified one number, it would be the end value, and then the start value would be 0, and then the step value implicitly would be 1 in the range function. So and so what happens is, for the first iteration for this for clause, it'll assign to the variable hours the first value in the range function. So the first value will be 0, assign 0 to hour, and then it goes down here into the body, and within the body of this clause we're looking at for minute in range 60, so the start value will be 0, and the step value will be 1 as well, implicitly. So starting from 0, it will assign to the variable named minute 0 for the first iteration for this for clause, and then it'll go into the body of this for clause, and then see there's another for clause, so that means I'm going to assign 0 to the variable named second, and then it's going to go into the body of this for clause. So now we're in the body of this for clause. It's going to print 0:0:0, and since we're separating our arguments, it's going to print a space between hour and the colon, and then the minute, and then blah blah blah. And so once it gets 0:0:0, it'll go back up to the for loop here, because we're at the end of the for body. So then it goes back up to this for clause and assigns value the next iteration, which will be 1. 1 will be assigned to the variable named second, then goes down into the body of the for clause here. So down here it'll say print 0:0:1. Remember, hour is still 0, minute is still 0, because we're still inside of this for clause body, and we're still inside this for clause body. So we're still working with this for clause. And so the next iteration would be 2 from this range. So 2 will be assigned to second. You go down here and print 0 colon 0, 0 colon 2, and then it'll be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and then it'll go all the way to 59. So the last value would be 59 from this range function. Assign 59 to second. Go down here, it'll be 0 colon 0 colon 59. And since the value 59, that's the last value, since the end value will not be inclusive, that means it won't do 60 because that's the end value. It doesn't include the end value. So the last value from this for clause will be 59 assigned to second, and then what happens after that? This for clause after 59 and the body itself will expire. Or I'm sorry, it'll actually get out of the for loop, this for loop right here. It'll get out of this for loop. So since it's got out of the for loop, the cursor is right here under this clause. So since the cursor is right here and there's nothing else to do under this clause, the cursor will go back up to here and do this for clause, and then assign the next value, which is 1 from this range, assign it to minute right here. And then it'll go into the body of this for clause. Remember, minute is now 1. Now it's inside the body of the for clause, sees that this is a for clause now, and so what will happen is it will assign 0 to second right here. And then after doing that, it will go down to print 0 colon 1 colon 0. And then what will happen after running this body, this is the end of the body for this for clause, it'll go back to this for clause yet again. And then assign the next value 1, and then it'll be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way to 59. And then if it goes to 59, and that's it, so it'll be 0, 1, 59. That means this this body under this for clause will end, and that means a minute will iterate to the next value. As you can see, you see what's happening here. The inner loop, such as this one, will go through all of its iterations for every single iteration of the outer loop. So this will go through all of its iterations for each iteration of the outer loop. This will go through all of its iterations for each of its outer loop here, outer loop iteration. So that means this will iterate 59 times, and then this will iterate once every 59 times, and then it'll iterate another iteration for the next 59 times, and then it'll iterate for the third time for the next 59 times. And then if you go up here, this will iterate once for every 59 times. Within that, it would be every 59 times for that single time, which will total to be 59 times. And then this will obviously iterate to our 1, so that'll be the next iteration. So the first iteration would be 0, the next iteration would be 1, 2, 3, 4. As long as it iterates through all of this, again, and then it'll go back up to the hour and then assign the next value. So the inner loop, such as this one, will iterate faster than the outer loop, as you saw from the output on the computer, well, from the shell. And since this will iterate 59 times, I said that, so then this will iterate 59 times for every hour. This will iterate 59 times for every minute. So do you see that? So yeah, to get the total number of iterations for all of this, if you wanted to know the total number of iterations, just multiply each iteration for each for clause together. So since we have 60 iterations in this one, 60 iterations in this one, and then 24 iterations in this one, you would want to do 24 times 60 times 60, and that'll give you the total iterations in the loop as a whole. When I say another iteration, I really mean the loop. So iteration, loop, same thing. So yeah, so that's this right here. So it'll end at 23:59:59, because remember, the last value from here, from this range function, will be 23. Assign 23 to hour, it'll output 23:59:59 for the last iteration for everything else. And since there's nothing after the range function, it'll get out of this for clause, or the for loop, altogether, and then the cursor will be down here. Or obviously it'll go all the way down to here and then run this as well. So if you wanted to make like a clock, this is how you would make it. And obviously when you run the first part of this program, it will not be the exact speed, because your computer is trying to give you the output as fast as it possibly can. So I don't know how to slow that down. So yeah. There's probably some way. I think using the time module, you can slow this down to be only increment for each second real time, but I don't know how to do that. So it's probably in the time module if you're curious. But that's way beyond what we're talking about. In C++, I could do that, but in Python I don't know how. So, but yeah, so here's the time pretty much, and using the inner loop and then the next inner loop and then the outer loop here. So that's it right there. It's pretty cool. Now down here is, actually, let me comment this out real quick so that we won't have to go through this loop over and over again. So okay, so down here I'm using one for loop, and so what this is going to do, you're going to assign the first value, which is 0, because implicitly the starting value is 0, the step value is 1. So it's going to start with 0, assign the call, and then it's going to print star. Remember, I don't think I said this before, but you don't have to use the variable, like this one for example. I never use it. You don't have to use it. You can just use this syntax to specify, especially from the range function, how many times you want to iterate. You don't have to use the variable call, short for column. So if you're curious. And down here in the print function, I'm printing the star for each iteration, and then this right here I'm assigning to the local variable end, which is nothing. So if I put two single quote or two double quote, it pretty much means a string that doesn't contain anything. So I don't think I talked about this. If you do print parentheses, oh I'm sorry, do print parentheses, you'll get this helpful doc string. That's what they call it, doc string, and it'll say print value comma ellipse. I think that's what it's called, or is it ellipses? That means you can put in as many arguments as you want, and then you can see this variable named sep right here. So what it's saying is this print built-in function has a local variable named sep, a local variable named end, a variable named file, and then a variable named flush inside of the built-in print function. So I know when I do this, I know which local variables I'm seeing. So I know what my input is for the print function. You've done that a lot. And then you know what the output is for the print function. We've used it to see the output in the shell. So the output in the shell when the Windows opens again. But we obviously, I don't know. I don't know what the process is inside the print function. So, which is good, because that means I don't have to memorize the process of every single function that I define in this program. But in this case, we're going to look at the local variable sep and end local variable. So if I just said print, like print hello right here, and that would mean that it'll just print hello, and then it'll assign the let me bring it up again. It'll assign the argument automatically to the sep and end to the new line. And so that's why you say when you type out print, it'll go to the new line in your console, because the end is automatically a escape sequence, and then your separation will automatically be a space. That's why, if you've seen this before, if you put in multiple arguments, in between the arguments there will be a space specified by this right here, and it'll be a new line because after using the print statement it'll give you a new line. So if we wanted to change that, as you can see down here, I said end. I want to assign to the local variable end, which that local variable end is inside of the print function. I want to assign that to not a escape character, but I want to assign it nothing. So as you can see, I'm assigning it nothing. So that means that at the end of the print function here, I'm going to assign end to nothing. So that means down here this will be on the same line. So so if we run the module and then say okay, see, as you can see, hello world, but this print statement will be on the same line because I said the end of my print will be nothing and not a new line, because that's the default if you don't specify what the local variable end is assigned to. Now if I do sep, so if I do sep, and if I put in another argument, hello world, right here, and then put a comma right here, because you're putting in two arguments, so argument comma, and then you're specifying sep to be let's say star, for example. So that means you're assigning the string star to sep. So this is actually going to output to hello star world, because the default for sep is a space, but I changed that default to be a star. So you'll see from the output it'll be hello hello star world, and obviously we're going down here and it's going to print on the new line because I didn't specify what my end value is going to be, so it's going to default to \n. So yeah, pretty cool. So in the case of down here in this for clause, I specified my local variable end, which that local variable is contained inside of the print built-in function. I'm assigning to the local variable end nothing. So at the very end, it's for each iteration it's going to print a star on the same line, because at the end of the statement it's going to be nothing at the very end. So star nothing, star nothing, star nothing, star nothing. It'll give me 6 stars for the output, as you can see right here. So yeah, so that's the local variable sep and the local variable end that you can change and specify for yourself. And let's do another for loop, so we'll actually have an inner for loop inside of the one that I'm going to create. So if I tab everything over and then put in another for loop for row and range, let's say like 3. So what this is going to happen is, you've seen this before, right? This is going to give me this, okay? And then after this expires, which means you see the output of this, I'm saying that I want to go to the new line. I need this in order to go to the new line. Okay, so that means the cursor is going to go here, and then it's going to go up to here and assign row to the next value, which is 1, because the first value for row is 0. Then the next value will be 1. And remember, I'm not using the variable row in the body itself. I'm not using it at all. I don't have to. I'm just using this syntax in order to iterate 3 times, and then using this for clause. I meant to say for clause, iterate 3 times, for clause. I'm using this for clause to iterate 6 times. So for this one, the body you've seen many times here. So that means for row, for each time this iterates, it's going to give me 6 stars each time row is iterated. And obviously at the end of this for loop, it'll put me on the next row. So essentially it's going to give us 3 rows by 6 columns. Yeah, as you can see, this belongs inside of here, and then at the end of the for clause here, I'm printing essentially a new line because I didn't specify what my end was. So the end local variable will be defaulted as a new line, so that's why I didn't pass anything. So it'll default to a new line. And then we'll go to the new line, and then it iterates the second time, which row will be assigned to 1, and then the last time row will be assigned to 2. So row will come out as 3 rows, column will come out to be 6 columns. So as you can see right here. If you're wanting to make this more complicated, just think about the inner loop. Just work on the inner loop itself, and if you can output the inner loop to your liking, then you can use the outer loop to control how many times you want to iterate the inner loop, as you can see down here. So yeah. Pretty fun, I guess. Maybe I should talk about the next one. So if I pound this out and then remove this, we have something very interesting. So as you can see, this is the prints here, so I can go to the new row, but inside of each column I'm going to print out a space, and obviously my end, it has to be nothing, because after this print statement I'm going to print it again, and I want another space to be right next to the first space. So that's why you're going to get a bunch of spaces, and it's going to give me a bunch of spaces, which is going to be depending on how I output this. And then down here it's going to print after getting out of the column, so it gives us a number of spaces for the column, and then down here it'll print star at the end of the number of spaces, and then end going to be nothing. So, and then down here I'm going to the new line, and then R will be assigned to the next value. This is actually pretty different, if I remember. Oh, it makes a staircase effect here. So as you can see, each time I iterate R up here, I'm actually changing the value down here, because this is referring to what R is assigned to as well. And yes, it can get somewhat complicated, and yeah. So if I iterate for the first iteration and I've assigned to R 0, so then that would mean that range is 0, and I would never get to this. As you can see, in the first iteration there is no space, because range 0 is obviously you won't do anything. So or I don't know, but yeah, first iteration won't go into here because range is 0, and then it'll print star. As you can see, there is no space. And then if we go to the next iteration, R will be assigned to 1, and then this one will be range 1, so that means it's going to iterate once for C, and then this will iterate once, which will give us a space right here. And then after this, it'll give me the star at the very end, and then I'm going to go to the new line, and then it's going to iterate R to be another value. And as you can see, this is how I make the staircase effect, following or preceding the stars for the next row, next row, next row, next row. And you can come up with, whatever you want to do, if you want to do this. And I don't know, maybe there's not enough practicality in doing this, I don't know, but it's interesting to see what the patterns are. I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, that's using the inner for loop inside of a for loop, obviously. And then up here we've seen 3 inner for loops. So, okay. And that's it. So we've seen today the using a for loop inside of a for loop up here, and then using a for loop down here to get each row and each column and its syntax that follows. And yeah, you can create some of these interesting shapes if you want to. Remember, if you want to actually do this and make whatever shape you want using the inner for loop and the outer for loop, just remember you have to know what your inner for loop is going to be. So just define what your inner for loop is, and then when you know what your output is for the inner for loop, then work on the outer for loop and then see if it works from there. When I first saw this, it was very confusing for me, but it just takes some practice. So yeah, so this is inner for loops, and that's it. So yeah, in the next tutorial, I should be discussing the return functions for the next tutorial. I did discuss it before, but I'll discuss it again. Just to refresh your memory. So yeah, that's it. I'll see you in the next tutorial later on. So, following. So, alright, see you later.